Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
Hello. How you doing, everybody? You made it just in time.
Yeah, that was perfect.
Welcome in. Meghan was trying to ask us a question before we started the show, but the countdown hit 0 right when she finished the question. What was the question?
Did we have a pod after the Utah game to talk about that?
No,
Okay.
we have not.
Cool.
So we can get into some Utah stuff today. Obviously, the Avs making a transaction over the weekend. We'll dive in a little bit to that into that, but kind of looks like the roster is getting finalized right before our eyes. Game number 1 on Wednesday. Preseason is finally behind us. How are you guys?
I'm great. I'm actually just sending a tweet right now. I apologize for being rude. Letting people know that questions are audible today on Jared Bednar's presser. We get requests after every Jared Bednar press conference saying, can you do something so we can hear the questions better? I feel bad because it's always a little bit of a different setup, but our guy Mark hopefully got it solved for today. So you should be able to go hear the questions, go listen to Jared Bednar's full presser, last presser before the regular season officially gets underway on Wednesday. And boy, is that an exciting thing to say. We were there today. It's basically the group. Will be some minor tweaks maybe here and there, but what we were looking at was more or less the NHL roster, and I'm so excited. The season starts tomorrow.
I stumbled over my question a little bit today, so I wish we could have done it a different presser, but I think it's okay.
I love that for us, though.
Yeah,
I think if we can,
it's huge.
We can get the questions in there. It'll put us above all the other press conference outlets that you can find. So that's big time.
What was your question?
I wanted to ask about a short-term goal opening this season, especially with a new addition added right at the deadline for it. Kind of what do you expect?
I panicked a little bit when I was talking to John Ludwig, who we'll hear from on this show in just a little bit. It was just one of those weird, wait, what's happening moments when I asked him, I said, when did you get the news that you were being claimed? And he said, I found out basically right at the deadline. And then he paused and my brain just started. I was like, what month is it right now? Deadline. Really?
Even saying it just now scared me.
Really messed me up. And he goes, yeah, found out basically right at the deadline, the cutoff for waivers. And I was like, okay, thank you. Because that sent me into an existential crisis. Suddenly I was like, wait a minute. Was I dreaming? Are we in the middle of a playoff race? What's happening? But yeah.
Yeah, Jesse touched on it. 12 forwards are out there and Artturi Lehkonen. So 13 forwards, 8 defensemen. That basically tells you the roster is pretty much finalized with what they have here. I also liked hearing Jared Bednar get into, all the Eagles guys have cleared waivers, so they could freely use any of those guys in the next 30 days. But the part that stood out to me was the update on Artturi Lehkonen. Here we were thinking he was close, maybe was going to possibly be a opening night guy. If not, maybe he'd be here for the home opener. Jared Bednar tells us that at the end of this month, he has his 5-month check-in, and then we'll know more from there. So it sounds like we still have 3 to 4 weeks until we can see Artturi Lehkonen back in game action.
Yeah, I know we were talking about pink jersey. It feels pretty solidly red at the moment. But honestly, the sense that I get is not that he's actually worse off than we anticipated. I think they're just being more cautious with the nature of the surgery that he had. I think they just want to be doubly sure that he has healed fully from it. And so I think they're giving him ample amount of time to ensure that he's healthy.
It was, we talked about it last week with Jared Bednar, or with Gabe Landeskog, I should say, and how Jared Bednar's comments of, we're hoping for him back near the start of the season maybe got taken out of context a bit and people maybe ran with it a little bit more. I feel like it was maybe the same thing with Lehkonen, where, they were just kind of speaking in generalities of like, yeah, we're, hopefully soon. And we maybe kind of ran with it a bit. What I think is abundantly clear, whether it's Gabe or Lecky's, they're not going to move any of this faster than they need to. Jerez said that they're pretty happy with where the forward group has landed. Pretty high praise for really what has turned into the fourth line there. So yeah, they're going to take their time with it. They're not in any rush. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And I feel like every year they won the Stanley Cup, and every year since then, they understand the marathon part of it a little bit more. I've worn this on shows before, but this is the hat that Vaguely Sober did. This is a newer hat. It's the newest hat to my collection, but fresh Gorilla Sports hat. These will be available for sale at some point soon. The storefront is built. There's just nothing in it, but these will be available soon. Fresh Gorilla Sports hats.
We'll dive into the forward lineup a little bit later. I think we got to start with the Eric Brandstrom trade and then the acquisition of John Ludwig over the weekend. I think that caught us all on our heels a bit. Didn't see that coming, but it makes absolute sense. I guess my biggest takeaway when I saw the John Ludwig, I'm going to call him Ludwig.
Jan
Ludwig signing is that
I feel like that's like a really bad Dutch accent.
The Avalanche looked at themselves in the mirror and said, we got to get tougher. I don't think we have enough grit in this locker room. Aside from Josh Manson, there's nobody really here to, force our will. So
I wanted to go first, but Megan made a real stinky face over there.
I don't.
You giving me the stinky face?
No, I don't think that's
she even
fully
mouthed,
honest.
Fuck you, JJ.
I don't think that's being fully honest, because Brandstrom is exactly as advertised in terms of what he is, and so they could have foreseen that it was going to shake out to be a lot of puck-moving guys. I don't think that's the new development. I think it was the lack of fit, the lack of comfortability. And it's not exclusive to just Brandstrom, but I think in having so many of that type of guy, they knew that they could part ways with one of them. And maybe that was always the plan too. Just in looking at the logjam of that similar model of player, they probably were going to have to make this type of decision anyways. But you could have said that exact same analysis before camp even opened. And so I'm just a little unsure about that being exactly the reason, because I don't think it's any more true today than it was at the start of camp. I think the lack of fit is really what drove this decision. To even hear Bednar very openly talk about he's not even super familiar with Ludwig. It all seemed like it came together kind of quick. I think they had to have a gut check honesty moment with how this decor was constructed and how some things have not gone according to plan. Because if it had gone according to plan and they got the puck moving guys who were also going to be responsible in their own end and fit in the Av system, I don't think they would have changed.
I guess to make myself clear, I didn't think it was we got to get tougher. Let's get Brandstrom out, bring Ludwig in. I think it was, okay, we got to get Brandstrom out. Who do we bring in? I don't know. How about somebody tough? Because we really lack in that department right now.
Well, I almost wonder if it was a combination of things. One is his last comment that's up here. The most recent one was Brandstrom traded because Malinsky did so well in camp. I want to make sure that we talked about Malinsky a bunch. I think he exceeded expectations in this training camp, and it maybe made it so that a player like Brandstrom was more expendable than he was maybe even just 2 weeks ago, because you saw Sam Malinsky showed so well in camp. But I almost wonder if it was like somewhere in the middle of what you guys were both just saying, of John Ludwig came available and the pro scouting department said, this is a guy who's different than what we have. And I almost wonder if how well Malinsky played combined with the availability of a guy who was very different and not so samey like Brandstrom. I almost wonder if over the course of just 30 minutes, they were like, yeah, it probably makes sense to grab this guy. We didn't know if Sam was going to make the jump. He did. We can grab this guy, change up the mix a little bit, and then we can just move on from Brandstrom. So I'm with you, Megan, that I don't think it was one of those things where they're like, "Ooh, we need to change things up." And I also don't think that it was like any necessarily like hard indictment on Brandstrom, but I think Sam Malinsky showed out and a player came available for free who was very different than what you had.
Well, going back to even last spring and in our early summer episodes, I think we were already, all of us, getting excited about Sam Malinsky and this season that he was about to have. Then Brandstrom and Shillington get brought into town, and Malinsky kind of took the back seat for us for some reason. We thought these guys were going to be in charge, and Malinsky, we'll see if he cracks the lineup again. And then training camp happened, and we were like, oh, never mind. Malinsky's still the guy. So I have the feeling that the Avalanche the whole time were like, no, Malinsky. As long as he shows out in camp, he'll be the guy here. But I think we just let the excitement of new guys coming into town cloud our vision of Malinsky's trajectory.
Well, I think there's two things with that. One, and this goes back a little bit to what we talked about on Friday's show, right? And you're right. It is a little bit of our own biases where we were saying, oh, historically they don't play the kids over veterans, so they're going to play the veterans. And one, I don't fully know if that's true, and two, that's clearly not what they did. But so that's the first thing, was I think we all kind of defaulted to they're going to play the veterans over young players when maybe we shouldn't have. And then two, I want to make sure I give Jared Bednar and the organization full marks. His answer to your question a couple weeks ago, Megan, or last week, of we're not picking our team based on experience. We're picking it based on performance. Nobody out there can say they didn't do that. Nobody. Right now, we are shaping up to have Cal Ritchie, Nikolai Kovalenko, Parker Kelly, Ivan, all in the lineup on opening night. Ivan, like maybe the biggest surprise. We're maybe not talking enough about Ivan. They picked the team based on who played the best. And I would maybe say Oliver Shillington is the one guy who I would maybe say didn't play at an NHL level, but he's also not taking anybody's job right now. They're not playing Oliver Shillington, or they're not picking him over somebody else who clearly outshined him. They came out and said, we're picking based on performance, and that's what they've done.
I go back to last season, and I've raised this point before, but we saw both Polin and Pavel make NHL debuts. In addition to Foodie and Olausen getting games, Malinsky makes his NHL debut. They've been giving young kids a chance quietly. And the players that have earned a look, like Ivan, who, what I loved is Jared Bednar talked about how he doesn't care where a player came from. Once you're here, you're his player. Mm-hmm. And he talked about, I don't even know where Ivan was drafted. That's a player who a summer and a season ago was not drafted. Mm-hmm. He just came in on an American League contract, and his trajectory has been incredible from that point on. And so I think that very authentically reinforces, though, Bednar's point that he is not evaluating off of background, past performance. He's just evaluating off of who the player is right now and what they can do for the Avs. And I think that is what has been to the benefit of players like Ivan and Malinsky in particular.
Well, and I think, as I mentioned, Jared Bednar said he can use any of the AHL guys that have been waived recently in the next 30 days. So I think Ivan's going to be on a really short leash. He trusts him. He believes in him. He wants to give him a shot. But the second he feels that maybe he just showed up for camp and starts slipping a little as the regular season comes, he's going to get the Riley Tufte treatment and get sent down. Maybe never seen again. I doubt it. But maybe it's a potential. It's a possibility. But Jared Bednar made it very clear to us over these last couple of weeks. He felt a little bit underwhelmed by those guys who were competing for the position and how they've showed up and how nobody was really able to just grab the position by the horns and dominate it. So it kind of feels like yes, these are the guys that I liked over camp, but I'm not fully in love with the Parker Kelly and Ivan of the group.
Well, and let's even Kiviranta. To me, that whole fourth line is like it's they should all be proud of themselves. It's a major accomplishment. It looks like they're going to make the cut coming out of camp. That's huge. Ivan will likely make his NHL debut in 2 days. Never be able to take that away from him. I'm very hopeful for Ivan in particular of those three, but you're right. Like that last line there, all three of those guys, I think are on, there's other guys coming for your job. There's other guys available. And, oh, by the way, within 5 weeks, we expect that 2 of those jobs are at least either already taken and replaced by Arturi Lehkonen and Val Nichushkin, or you're right on the cusp of those 2 players coming back in. So, those players, for them, I almost kind of picture it like the Freddie Olofsson thing from last year when we asked him about making the team. He was like, my goal now is to stay here as long as possible. That's how this shifts for those guys on the bottom line.
And for Ivan, he's young and waiver exempt. And so the flexibility was always there. So I think it really is a reflection of how Bednar felt about his camp. He could have sent him down sooner without any consequence, knowing he could come right back up. I think that it is kind of a scathing than criticism of what other players failed to do. It's something that Ivan should wear very proudly, but I also think it's very interesting how Jared Bednar has now repeated himself about a disappointment around guys not coming and seizing those jobs.
We talked to John Ludwig today, just before we move on too much from the guys fighting for the roster. I thought we should maybe just hear what he had to say. Not a long interview, but just hear what he maybe had to say. Or were you circling back?
I was gonna circle back.
Oh, okay. If you're circling, no. We talked about it and we moved on from it. I was just scared to get too far, but you got it.
Bring it on home.
Now we're all derailed.
I'm sorry.
Just trust that I've got control. I know how to drive the bus.
We forgot last week though. We had 2 clips queued up last week. We forgot.
Did we?
Both. Yeah.
Well, let's get to John Ludwig for Jesse.
I couldn't have said it better.
Get the news that it was Colorado that you were heading to.
Right at the deadline of the waiver wire there, I was about to step on the ice, and then they grabbed me, and I found out I was coming here.
What were your initial thoughts when you heard it was the Avalanche?
I was super excited. I was thrilled. I mean, this team's special. They've done special things over the last few years, so it was amazing news.
We've heard from some new guys before that systems work can be a little bit like drinking from a fire hose. Just how's the first day been? I'm sure you probably haven't even had a lot of those conversations yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to just get in here, meet all the guys, get on the ice, get a feel for the altitude, because I found out today that was a big change, and it's going to take some getting used to, but we'll get into systems more here, but it's been a warm welcome so far.
Just overall impressions of today on the ice. I mean, you mentioned the altitude, but just coming out here and getting out with the guys, seeing how they work, what was that like for you?
Yeah, it's a high-level team with high-character guys. It was similar over in Pittsburgh, a lot of high-level guys like that, but I know this is a hard-working team, and they got a special group here, so I'm hoping I can add to that.
About the way that you like to play?
I'm defense first, physical, gritty. Those are the staples of my game. I just like to take care of the puck and not let the other team score, and that's pretty much it.
What challenges are present making this change this close to the start of the regular season?
I'd say just getting used to the new systems and playing with new guys. It's always a big step, and it takes some time to get used to. So I'm just going to be diligent here coming up and studying all our systems and try and get used to it as quick as I can.
Is there anyone in particular that you're familiar with on this team or an organization, or is it all brand new walking in for you?
No, I mean, a lot of Western Canadian guys I've talked to so far, which is nice. And I played with Ross Colton for a little bit in the minors a few years back, but other than that, it's a lot of new faces for me.
What was it like playing with Ross from your memory?
It was during the COVID year, so it was a short time, but he was a great guy back then and still seems like a great guy, so I'm excited to play with him again.
Did he reach out to you when the change happened, or?
No, just saw him today. We had a warm welcome, said what's up, and yeah, we're ready to get going.
Thanks so much, John.
There you guys have it. You can get your first impressions and get a feel on the vibes that John Ludwig projects. I thought he was a really cool guy to talk to. He was smiley, happy, and just looks like a guy that knows how to play that gritty style and can get a little angry at times. We'll see how he cracks the lineup and when. Right now, I think we're pretty set on 5 of the 6 defensemen who are going to be playing regular minutes. That leaves Calvin DeHaan, Oliver Shillington, and John Ludwig kind of in the mix. What do you guys feel about the defensive group now? And I guess really those 3 guys that are kind of interchangeable as that 6th man in the lineup.
I don't want to derail too much, but I kind of wanted to unpack what being physical brings to the decor in ways that can sometimes be hard to measure, because I don't think something like fights, for example, are a very useful metric when it comes to physical toughness in the way that I find meaningful for a decor. It's not to say it doesn't matter altogether, but I do think that fights are trending generally on a decline in the league. It's just not something we're seeing as frequently. So I'm not necessarily looking as physical toughness equals enforcer. I'm looking at things like when I look at Josh Manson's games, there are things you can measure like hits per 60. And I think that's something that a player like Ludwig tracks high in.
He does. Yeah.
And I think too, like, I don't even want to go the deterrent route, because I don't just mean deter cheap shots, deter fighting. I just think that when you are playing opposite a player that is physically tough, like a Manson or a Ludwig, you prompt a different reaction out of a player. They might, just pull back a little bit more or reevaluate how they're going to carry the puck. And so I think those things can be hard to measure, and maybe we don't do it enough justice as media types talking about it, why that sort of thing is so valuable to this D group.
I think that's an outstanding point. And there's 2 examples that come to my mind. One was when Dustin Byfuglien played. He was obviously in a different stratosphere of intimidating physical. But Megan, you're right. Teams would avoid carrying the puck down his side of the ice because guys are like, I don't want to get crushed. And then, coincidentally, also involving the Jets, do you guys remember the Nikita Zadorov game where he almost killed 3 people, including Mark Scheifele, in open ice? That was a game that I remember specifically. Nikita Zadorov had a huge hit early in the game. And then he had that hit on Scheifele. And for the rest of the game, the Jets stopped skating up his side of the ice. They were going out of their way to break out on the other, wrapping it around the boards, skating out of the opposite end of their own zone. And it led to all kinds of problems and confusions. And that was in the 48-point season. And that game was the best game of the year for the Avs. And I genuinely, to this day, I remember it because Nikita Zadorov left such an impact on that game that it forced the Winnipeg Jets to change the way they were playing. So I think that's a great call out, Megan, because again, not that John Ludwig is going to go out there and be dropping bodies every time he steps on the ice, but having that type of physical presence, that, like you said, the deterrent, that's a very under talked about topic.
And I just want to be clear, not a deterrent from fighting and cheap shots.
Right. No.
It's hard to measure things that don't happen.
Right.
But I just mean when you play a punishing style of game, I think that deters players from certain types of things. What they might get away with, pushing the envelope, towing that line. I think it just changes the nature of what a player will do opposite them.
Yeah, no, I think it's spot on. You want to go around a defenseman like that versus, you see a smaller defensive group, your thought is we're going at them, right? And no, I think that's pretty good analysis. And yeah, fighting really isn't the most important thing in a defenseman like that. You want him to be just tough to get through and get around. And I think that's pretty good analysis.
Well, and then just admittedly, and hey, Jared Bednar said the same thing, so I'm not alone. I didn't know a lot about John Ludwig till today.
Same.
There's a guy that when players like this come to town, we kind of do our best to pull together whatever info we can quickly. But I think he makes a lot more sense. When I first saw it, the Avs claimed another defenseman. I was confused initially. I was like, what are we doing here? You're trying to whittle this roster down and you just added to the mix. Obviously moving Brandstrom made more sense, but then when you get the sense for what type of player John Ludwig is, what he brings different, this is a Josh Manson light, in theory.
Yep.
In my preliminary deep dive, I think that he doesn't have enough body of work at the pro level yet to evaluate. That sounds crazy. He's been in the pro leagues for a few seasons now, but his early trajectory has been hampered by injuries. And so I think that we haven't really gotten a full sense of what he is capable of at the pro level. I'm not going to say he's a bona fide NHLer right now today. I just think that has affected our analysis of him compared to someone like Brandstrom, who's also a younger player, but we've seen more full seasons in the NHL. And I think the differences are the physical style of play. I think everything else beyond that, like this is a player who can play on his offside, hasn't done much PK so far in his career, but you don't doubt that's something that they're going to see if he can do here in Colorado. It just feels like he's kind of an unknown quantity, and we got a sense for what Erik Brandstrom was and why that wasn't quite what they needed. Whereas Ludwig, it's a very clean slate for him, and I'm excited to see what he does with this opportunity.
Well, and then just real quick, not only that, but with the, Brandstrom being a little bit more NHL proven, Brandstrom's also the type of defenseman that you want him activating in the play and contributing and picking up his points here and there. I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. It's a lot more noticeable when that type of stuff isn't happening, right? And with Ludwig, I think the same as Manson, like you always want them to be jumping in offensively when they can, contributing where possible, but that's not what you're looking for out of Ludwig. And so again, not that there's any less pressure on him than a Brandstrom, but it's just what you're asking of him is very different than what you're asking of Erik Brandstrom.
I also think of the waiver component, right? He was waived by the Pittsburgh Penguins, who have a plethora of D. And I think that's really what you need to realize. It's not like Erik Brandstrom where the team saw him, didn't like him, waived him. They just have a lot of really good names there in Pittsburgh on that blue line. So the fact that he didn't fit in the NHL lineup, I don't think is so much to read into as if you're the Vancouver Canucks, who consequently waived Brandstrom as well. But if you're receiving a guy like Brandstrom, you're like, oh, the Avalanche kind of crumpled him up and threw him away. I think this is a kind of a different tale. This is a little bit more promise, a little bit more hope that he can play NHL minutes and fit into this lineup.
Well, and you got a pick out of it too, So now suddenly you have an extra chip either to trade or to use that pick next year. It's a 4th round pick. It's not terrible. You got the player for free. Like you said, like for all intents and purposes, he was a PTO in Colorado, and you got a 4th round pick for him.
Mm-hmm. I feel like traditionally one team's, and I hate using this verbiage, but one team's trash is usually another team's trash. But in the case of Ludwig, it feels like there's some recycling that can be done.
I've learned to trust the Avs pro scouting department. They seem to find the right guys for the right spots of the roster. And the nice part about it is if it is like that, you waive him, you send him down, or he moves on somewhere else, and it's no sweat off your back.
It is pretty low risk.
Yeah.
So compared to DeHaan, Shillington, where do you rank those 3?
Including Ludwig?
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be really mean. What I'm about to say is going to be mean.
Oh, no.
But I just got it purely based on what we've seen. And we've seen very little from Ludwig. For me, it's DeHaan, Ludwig, Shillington. And until we see something out of Oliver Shillington that makes me think he's an NHL defenseman, he's really, really, really continued to struggle.
After watching today's practice, I'm right there with you. Shillington just still does not look good.
It was not a good practice day. It was weird.
All around.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, that is true.
What they did in practice was the same as what we've been watching all through camp. But how they looked was weird. They just looked a little bit exhausted and a little bit unfamiliar. And the thing is, this is the most familiar the group has been. There obviously are still new additions and different things, like poor Casey Middlestat. That's just entirely unknown and new to him. But there's a lot of things that aren't so new. Anyways, I won't go off on that. But I'm not ranking Ludwig. I can't. I just haven't seen him play. I really don't feel comfortable doing it. But it is DeHaan Shillington. I'll put Ludwig on a side tier for now. I know that's a cop-out, but I don't want to pull what we did with Malinsky in the summer. Like, these new guys just suddenly moved up the food chain because they were new. I'm not going to do that to Shillington.
Because that's what it is, though. That's what it is, right? Like, it's not even... When I say Ludwig behind DeHaan and ahead of Shillington, Megan's right. Like, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to be funny or anything to Shillington. And she's also 100% right in that, like, we've seen him for 45 minutes on the ice. To me, it's more of that's how much I think Shillington has struggled.
He has.
And again, I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt those first few days. But then suddenly those first few days turned into the first week. Then that first week turned into all of camp. Then all of camp suddenly turned into every preseason game we saw him playing. And all of that led up to, how many times did we say his name today at practice, followed by, what are you doing? Bad mistakes. Not oh man, pucks are jumping on him. What, like, bad mistakes.
He didn't know where to be, like, at the start of a drill. Sometimes it was the type of confusion I've never seen at this level.
Not for this long. Not again. And I even asked Josh Manson today about if he helps new guys coming in, because he specifically told us 2 seasons ago, this is crazy. Like, it's a crazy change. We've seen players struggle. Oliver Shillington looks outright confused on the ice right now. And it's getting to the point where I'm waiting for him to turn the corner. I'm waiting for what, because again, a lot of what was said about Shillington when he signed with the Avs was, oh man, him and his agent were arguing he should be top pairing. Calgary only saw him as a second pairing guy. To me, based on what we've seen for 3 weeks, this guy shouldn't be anywhere near the top 4 of an NHL lineup. Arguably not even on this NHL roster.
I also think you asked Josh Manson a question about just the overall depth of the defensive group, right? And he goes, well, there's the 4 of us. Yeah. We really like Sam Malinsky.
Yeah.
And then there's the other guys.
Yeah.
It's not exactly what he said, but in short.
Yeah, it's
paraphrasing. And I think that tells you everything about how they feel about that position right now. So to tie it all into where we were earlier with the forward group, it still seems like there's a little bit of a hole on that 6th defensive spot. You've got Kovalenko and Ritchie skating on a second line with Middlestat. Question marks at the NHL level still.
Yep.
And then you've got the 4th line of Kiviranta, Parker Kelly, and Ivan. That being said, this is the start of the NHL season for us. How are you guys feeling about this team right now?
Do you want me to go first? I feel really good about the group across 82 games. I think it's going to be an uphill climb in October. And I think your top guys, Nate, Mikko, Cale, Taves, Sam Girard, Josh Manson, Casey Middlestat, Jonathan Drouin. They not only have to like drive the bus, like they got to be driving it, directing traffic. They got to have, like, one of them's got to be in an escort car up front, an escort car behind. Like they're gonna have to shoulder the weight here, and I'm optimistic that guys like Cal Ritchie. I mean, the skill is bananas. Like, we're seeing it every day as he gets a little more comfortable. I mean, he was walking guys out there today, getting into scoring position, getting to the net, getting opportunities. Like, you can see where there's areas to be excited. I think Sam Malinsky is even better than maybe we're giving him credit for, as much as we talked him up this camp. I really think they've, like, Cale Makar called out Sam Malinsky. Josh Manson called out Sam Malinsky. Like, I think he's going to be a good player. So seeing what I'm seeing now, knowing that optimistically they're adding Artturi Lehkonen, Val Nichushkin, and you hope Gabe Landeskog, we'll see. I think there's a lot of reasons to be excited about where they're going to be in March. but it's going to be an uphill climb to start. Like I also think there's a completely real scenario where on December 1st, they're at the top of the Central Division. Like this is starting to feel like one of those teams, and they've showed it over the last number of years. They just keep chugging along. Injuries come up, players are in and out of the lineup, player assistance program, and it's always not always as pretty as it was in 2022, but they just keep going. They just keep moving along. And I think they're going to really rally this year. Like, I really do. I think they're going to rally at the start of the year. It's also a product of the West isn't very good.
Mm-hmm.
I think the West is stacked.
Really?
Yeah.
Who?
Edmonton.
Well, I know, but that's one team.
I think Vancouver's going to be good again.
I think they'll be good.
I think Vegas is going to be good. I think LA is going to be better than they were with a more goaltender goalie in goalie goal. And then I think that Dallas is still going to be good and we're going to hate them. They're not going to be as good without Tanev and Pavelski, but they're going to be fine.
I agree with everything. I just think that those are all flawed teams.
I don't think it gets much better out east. Like after you go through like New York, Florida, I'm not sure about Carolina, New Jersey. That's kind of the second tier below, but those are flawed teams in the same conversation.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think that's where the Avs are going to be able to hang on at the start of the year.
Easily.
Is I don't think, similar to last year, and maybe I worded that wrong, saying I don't think the West is very good, because you're right. Like there's quality teams, but I just think similar to last year, there's no one team to me that I'm like, oh man,
a juggernaut,
top to bottom, that team's unstoppable. And I think the Avs are right in that same mix with everyone else. Maybe an extra flaw here or there, but they also get the cheat code of having the best defenseman in the world and the number 2 forward in the world. Like that makes up a lot of ground for this also being a flawed team to start the season. And so I don't think there's any group of teams out there that I'm like, they're just not going to be able to hang.
I do agree with that. And it's more so that I think very positively of the Avs as well as the competition. I think it's going to keep things competitive, not only within the Central Division, just in the West as a whole. I take a lot of pride in that for some weird reason, like the West being a dominant conference. I don't know. I got testy there for a second, but I agree with your opinion about the group. And I actually look forward to how this season begins for the Avs, because I think it's going to create a lot of naysayers that are going to underestimate what the Avs are capable of, because they're basing it off of what the Avs fourth line looks like right now. And to your point, when they get some kind of reinforcement in the way of players coming back, whoever that might be, it's an entire line difference.
Yeah.
And I'm not doubting the impact of Nathan MacKinnon on the heels of a Hart-winning season.
I'm going to be the naysayer.
Good.
I think this team
That's exactly who Megan just said she was looking
I'm
forward
looking
to talking
forward
to.
to it.
I know. I think this team is going to sputter a little bit out of the gate. I think Jared Bednar's in for maybe one of the biggest challenges he's ever had as a coach here in Colorado. Yes, you have that top line, and that's going to be fantastic. What you don't have is much trust. You know, we see him working with guys like Cal Ritchie constantly. I don't think I've ever seen a player get so much one-on-one time with Jared Bednar as Cal Ritchie does on the ice. So I question his amount of trust and how much he can use that second line. Kovalenko also being on that line throws in another little curveball, a language barrier. We've heard a lot of positive things of how he works and how he understands things, but where's Jared Bednar's comfort level in using that line? Then you get to the third line, the putts in 20s, right? There's a lot of promise there.
I feel like you're lingering on the putts and 20s.
It was funny.
I love the line from Ross Colton.
Well, I didn't know if you were still saying like, oh, they're just out there putzing.
No. I don't think they're still putzing. I think that was exclusive to that.
Keep the name then.
But I think there are still some things they need to work out on that line, right? Miles Wood. We dove into Miles Wood last week. Who knows how that line really generates according to Jared Bednar's liking. Then, of course, that fourth line of Kiviranta, Parker Kelly, and Ivan, the hole in the defensive spot that we've already touched on. The hole in the backup goaltender position is something I think
he's still on this one.
I'm
with
still on
Eustace.
it. Eustace had one good preseason game. Isn't fully enough for me to be convinced that this is a force to be reckoned with the goaltending situation. Power play 1 is going to see all of the time until you get some of these reinforcements back, because power play 2,
They never play power play 2.
I know. They used to.
No.
They used to. There used to be a relatively decent power play 2 out there.
When they had the like Kadri, Landeskog, McKinnon, Ranton, and McCarr, power play 2 still featured 3 defensemen.
They still used them, though. They did use them. I feel like this is going to be a situation where you're going to be relying on those top guys more than ever. And we've seen in the past, it's doable for stretches, but then there are times where they can't carry all of the weight, or they get shut down by a good opponent, and it's left to the rest of the group, and the rest of the group is just, I'm not fully loving it right now.
Here's what I'm excited about, and it's something relative to what you just said. Jared Bednar is not going to have a choice this year, at least at the start of the season, because you're right. He likes to trust. Can I trust that you're going to, go out there and do the right thing? Are you reliable, et cetera, et cetera? He's physically not going to have that option this year. 2 of the 4 lines that we saw out there today, one of them was 2/3 rookies. The other one, I know Parker Kelly and Yoel Kiviranta aren't rookies, but they're young tweener players. And then Ivan, whatever it actually is. So like, unless he's just wanting to bounce back and forth between the top line and the 20s line over and over again for 3 weeks, he's going to have to get outside of the comfort zone. And it's probably why they are doing so much on ice coaching in real time, is because they're probably understanding these are our guys. Like, I'm going to need to be giving Cal Ritchie key ozone starts. Nikolai Kovalenko is going to need to immediately come out and be a little Arturi Lehkonen-ish. And so I just think that they're going to be left with no choice but to kind of turn the keys over to some of these kids. And I think the top of the lineup is going to be a pleasant surprise. I think that 4th line is going to be an adventure. I think that's going to be an adventure that you got to make sure you're matched up well. Otherwise, I think that's a group that could get burned pretty bad. But I also think he's stacking that line with guys who are hard workers and kind of default to doing the right things and being in the right areas. So if it was feeling like he was going to ride 2 lines super heavy, I'd agree with you.
He's never been afraid to really overuse guys at times, right? I think there's going to be a lot of instances here at the beginning of the season.
See, but I don't think he's going to do it this early in the season.
You don't think Cale Makar is going to play 30 minutes in a night? Nathan McKinnon,
no, especially not on the back end, because the defense is where I do disagree with you. Like, I think that third pairing, I feel very, very comfortable with Sam Malinsky there, and then I think you are more than fine with Calvin DeHaan in that spot. Third pairing, 15 minutes a night. Like, I think you're more than comfortable with that. To me, it's the holes up front. How well can the young kids step in immediately? How well can Casey, I can't remember which of you asked that question. How well can Casey Middlestat help bring them along as a young player himself? And then can that 4th line survive?
Malinsky held his own 23-minute night on the top pair with Taves in preseason.
I
think
he'll be
fine.
Lineup on the other side.
Exactly. I think he'll be fine holding down the third pairing. You don't want to necessarily see Calvin DeHaan play too much and risk any sort of injury or exhaustion to himself. I don't mean that in a mean way.
No,
but I think it'll be
true.
Sheltered, but not in the way we're used to it being sheltered. I think we'll see it utilized more spread evenly, because they're especially shorthanded on both special teams in different ways. Like, I think that top unit, sure, we'll probably see PP1 significantly, but Jared Bednar alluded to some of the top guys pitch hitting on the PK as well as needed. And so I think that's where he's going to be cautious then how he deploys PP1 if he is tapping into any of those guys for penalty kill time as well, in addition to what they're going to take on 5v5. And that's where I think it gets interesting. I think a lot of it will go back to the penalty kill then. How well are players like Ivan, who I think will be kind of a second unit out on the PK, how well are they handling that responsibility? If they can absorb it pretty well, it takes a little pressure off those top guys to start letting them play into their roles. But I think the concern about load management at the start is a very valid one. I think within the forward group, it'll be interesting because right now, just based off of the line rushes, that fourth line does look very... It needs to earn some trust. It's Kiviranta, Kelly, and Ivan.
I like calling him Ivan.
That is a kid, though, who does not lack any confidence. Like, he nearly scored 3 times in the Utah game, and that was on a mixed line. You know, it doesn't really matter who he's playing with. He's going to find his opportunities. So I'm not going to count him out. I'm just a little worried on the early results of Middlestad's line, and it's just because you can tell they waited until late in the preseason to get him in games. He looks like he's going to need a little bit of time to get his feet under him.
Who are you talking about, Casey?
Middlestad.
Yeah.
Not a criticism of him. He has new line mates around him and has just gotten into some games. I think there's going to be an adjustment period. But to your point, I think it will get really fun because I've loved what I've seen in Kovalenko through preseason, and Richie, another player who doesn't lack confidence. And you do see it grow every day. Some of the things that he tries are audacious, and I'm excited to see him at the NHL level.
Well, then the other thing too that I even have to remind myself all the time, these lines are going to get blended. So, you know, that'll be, I think, maybe the way that when you do see, you know, maybe a player like Nathan MacKinnon playing a lot, it's going to be with a lot of different players. He'll center different groups. You know, he'll probably have a couple. Jared will probably have a couple ozone starts where he'll throw Mikko out there with Casey and Cal Ritchie and you know, stuff like that. So that's the other thing to keep in mind too.
Here's another tidbit I'll throw in there, more so as devil's advocate than anything, but we've heard Nathan MacKinnon a couple times address his mileage. I think he looks great. He looks like himself. That being said, what's going through his mind right now as far as where he's at in his career?
What do you mean?
Does he feel like he's at a point where he's starting to feel all these minutes? Is he at a point where he's starting to, I don't know, not want to bear as much of the load as he has in years past?
You could tell me that he's at a point where he's starting to feel some of the minutes, but Nathan MacKinnon will skate 35 minutes till he falls over dead. Like, he'll skate 35 minutes a night.
We might see that this year.
Every night until he's 50 if he can. You know what I mean? Like, as he talks about, it's why he takes such good care of himself. It's why he focuses so intensely on what he puts into his body and recovery. That seems to be the word that I hear more than anything else around the Avalanche organization is recovery. They really focus on making sure their bodies are ready to go 2 nights later. You know, he told Meghan at the beginning of camp, he was very intentional with what he did this summer, focusing a lot on recovery. And I think that's probably because he was having conversations with Joe and C-Mac and Jared all summer, like, get those skating boots ready. We're gonna go through a few pairs of skates in the first couple months, probably gonna wear them out. So I imagine he's very ready for this.
I think everything Bednar has said about how a game night unfolds, if MacKinnon was left to his own devices, he would be on the ice for 60 minutes. So I don't doubt that his self-evaluation just views things in terms of how many more cups can I win? And so I think it's not, am I doing too much too soon? I think he just sees the future in terms of cups. And so I think that he still wants more. And if that means taking on high 20s for game minutes each night, I think he's fine with that. But thankfully, I think he's got good enough people around him too to recognize the importance of some recovery.
Well, and I mean, Sid, with the way that he watches and tries to model what he does off of Sidney Crosby, you know, Sid's got 2 more cups. He's got a couple gold medals. A ton more MVPs and things like that. So I think Nate's still in like second gear. Like I still think he's got more to give.
Okay. Yeah.
I do wonder though. I wonder if he's thinking less about like personal evaluation of where he's at going into the year and worry around the rest of the team. I don't know if that's something I could ever find an appropriate way to ask him, but I do wonder how, if we had Nathan MacKinnon on this set, how he would talk about his expectation for the season coming out of the gate. What does this team look like in the first month?
Yeah. I do also wonder, and this is sometimes narratives that we can create. Like, I wonder if he's almost taking it with a chip on his shoulder, a little bit of like, oh, guys like JJ don't think we can come out of the gate and don't think we can carry the load on that, huh? All right, cool. I don't know if he is. Again, maybe that's sometimes when we think about like, oh, they're playing with an edge. A lot of times like, what? No, you said that. I didn't say that.
You said that.
But I do wonder too if he's got a little bit of like a snarl, like people are already counting us out because we're missing so many guys. We're gonna go get on the start of this season a little bit extra.
And I'm not counting them out by any means.
Heard it here first.
I'm a little bit on the skeptical
him,
side
Nate.
as to how they're going to come out of the gate. I think this year more than ever, just worry about getting in the playoffs. Then you can make some noise.
I agree with that.
But I think the road ahead is a challenging one. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun to follow how they navigate. I think if you truth serum Jared Bednar, he maybe would tell you, you know what, this year I could use a couple more weeks of camp, a couple more weeks of practice to get some things sorted out. But that's not the case, and the NHL season is knocking on the door.
Isn't that crazy that if they had been picked for Global Series this year, their roster would have need to been finalized like a week ago?
That would have been rough for a lot of reasons.
Seriously, like those two teams didn't get an extra week of camp. Like they didn't start camp a week early. I didn't care for that. I love the Global Series. I think they need to do it every year. And in fact, I think they should send more teams over. Like they did the 4 teams that they sent over last year and they all played each other. I think that's what they need to do.
I like the idea of them playing European teams too. Throw in some, like they have been, right?
But like I can't remember what 4 teams it was last season that went overseas and they each played each other, so that every team played 3 games or something like that.
Beginning of last year.
Yeah, and like that's how they should do it. Send the teams out there for a couple weeks, let them play a few games. I know you're talking about losing gate revenue at their individual buildings and stuff like that, but if the true goal is to grow the game, do that. Send 10 teams to go start the season. Each of them played 4 games, 5 games overseas in different venues, and start it with the rest of the season.
But then the jet lag.
Yeah, but if you go over there and you can play a handful of games, if you can come home with 5 games played instead of just a back-to-back against one team.
Yeah.
Because to me, that was, I think, the issue with it is you'd fly out a week early, play 2 days in a row, and then you'd fly back and get another week off. Like, let them go over there for a couple weeks, play a few games, and then give them, a few days off coming back so they can get readjusted. But just make better use of the trip instead of 2 back-to-back games.
I like one of the comments here. Send the entire division.
Ooh, yes.
I do like that.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, that's what they should do. Yeah, you pick one division. It's a Central Division Global Series this year. It's a Metropolitan Division Global Series. And then go over there and play a handful of games. And yeah, it just evens the playing field a bit more.
Yeah. Well, I got everything off my chest that I wanted to. Like I said, I'm approaching this a little bit skeptical. I think it's going to be fun to watch how Jared Bednar and even C-Mac, the Avalanche are no strangers to wheeling and dealing. They're not afraid to do it at any time. So we'll see how they navigate all this, who they end up liking, and how the opening night roster compares to playoff night game 1.
Ryan Johansson and Tomas Tatar last year brought in and moved out within months, weeks. Brandstrom much shorter. But again, like it's just another example of they looked at it, they identified not going to work, and they moved on. Like that.
Even Prosvetov, you could throw into that.
Right. Like I feel like it's you're hard pressed to find a lot of teams that will run their organization that way. Of if it's not what we want, we're changing. We don't care if it optically looks funny that we just brought this guy in. He's been here for 3 weeks. If it's not right, we're making a move for what we think is right. And I think there's an admirable quality about that management style.
Well,
that's all I got.
Anything else you want to throw out there for the people? Right
for
on.
the people, by the people.
Any housekeeping notes? Jesse will be in Vegas.
Yep, we'll be in Vegas. We'll be there. That's it.
Right on.
All notes concluded. Megan, any notes?
No. We're talking to CMAC tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll get to hear from Chris McFarland tomorrow.
Get excited.
Yeah, we'll have that full thing for you. Guerrilla Sports, we'll have all availabilities that we get tomorrow. No Jared Bednar, but we will talk to General Manager Chris McFarland. Good call, Megan.
Exciting stuff.
Great call, Meg Daddy.
I think probably on Wednesday, Jesse will be busy doing morning skate stuff. Megan and I will be here doing a show.
Megan and I will be in Vegas.
Oh, you're
busy
going to?
doing morning skate stuff.
Oh,
yes.
I didn't know she was going.
Yeah.
Well, great. I'll just be here with my thumb up my ass.
Live.
You guys can patch me in. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us. Let's get excited for the regular season. We'll see how the Avalanche fare. Follow Jesse and Megan from Vegas on Wednesday. Thanks for hanging out with us today. For Jesse and Megan, I'm JJ. See you guys later.
Bye.